Alright. So we're gonna try this again. Right, try to get through this if we can. That'd be cool. So salute to everyone who's watching True Colors for the first time. My name is YASHAYA, better known as King David. We're gonna bring out what happened to us. The word says that they will remember themselves in the land of their captivity. The word also says that who will go for us? Go for us to what? To bring the people back. To go teach the word. To go to remind them. It says, how would they believe unless someone is sent to go preach? So the people will remember themselves as I begin to open up this book and show you exactly what happened to us. Not what the history books have said, but based off of your own history book called the Bible. That is why it is fought against so hard, because it is literally your history. So, we're gonna go ahead and just get everything started. Yeah, that's what we're about to do. We'll get everything started. We're gonna get everything started right now. We'll be back with this word. Hopefully you didn't keep the Sabbath today, because it was not the Sabbath. It was not the Sabbath. All right.
Revelations. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image, and receive his mark into his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of Elohim, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Satan cast into the lake of fire. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and they shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. The great white throne. And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before Elohim, and the books were open, and another book was open, which was in the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged, every man according to their works, in death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death, and whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. But I will tell you what will happen to cowards and to everyone who who is unfaithful, or dirty-minded, or who murders, or is sexually immoral, or uses witchcraft, or worships idols, or tell lies, they will be thrown into that lake of fire and burning sulfur. This is the second death.
Your haters, not your haters, they're your fruit testers. Your haters, not your haters, they're your fruit testers. Hey, who I said your haters, not your haters, they're your fruit testers. Multitude like your haters, not your haters, they're your fruit.
Beats by all the songs.
Truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, truth colors. Hey, when you learn the truth, it will set you free. Many are held captive, stolen identity. But let me just shoot the breeze, release you from Satan's squeeze. He's all like enemies, no matter the color you see. That truth flame, truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, truth colors, yeah, truth colors.
All right. Guess we're gonna read again. Massa, that was earlier. All right. All right. All right. Let's go. All right. So we read this earlier, and we said that he pretty much interpreted this wrong right here, which is correct, that he got this wrong. He wants to make this fit in the narrative that some people ain't going to slavery. He says, not all Judah are supposed to undergo slavery. No. Remember, it is not all the people who are captive. It is a great part. Let's read Ezekiel 6:8, 9, and 8. All right. But I will leave some remnants of you who will escape the sword among nations. So I don't understand if you don't understand what among nations mean. So if you are among the nations, if it means you escape the sword, that means you will not be killed. So even though you are spread among the nations, it means that you will not be killed. You still will be undergoing, watch this, you'll be mistreated, but you won't be killed. So watch this. So a lot of our people are being killed. Look how it lines up. Some of you will escape the sword, but guess what? If you are not meant to escape the sword, you will not escape the sword. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how young you are. The curse is upon our lives, or upon the people's lives, or upon us as a whole still exists. Because everyone has not received me as their king, and they won't. Only 144,000 is only, watch this, of our people will accept me as fully king, right? Fully Yah. And we see this in the scripture. The Father has already allotted only 144,000. Now, for those who are in that number, give the Father some praise. Let's see. So we're going to start at, like I said earlier, 6, Ezekiel 4, because this bad boy is opening up pretty good, right? This right here is our slavery, right? If you count the years, you're going to have the exact number that the Bible says we're going to have. And we actually went in and changed it to just 400 years versus the 430 years. I could play something from the call part 4. I think it's the call part 1, where someone, went through the whole explanation of that 430 years, and they counted like, yeah, 400. Yeah, we're gonna bring it out. But I want you to know that Ezekiel is after Moses, so it's not before Moses, it's after Moses. So there's no way they could be talking about the slavery or the that Moses and them are coming out of. This is not talking about that. This is talking about something else. It's a whole nother slavery that our people are about to go into. That is what is popping off. So that kills what a lot of people think they know and what they believe is actually popping off. Gambia Truth Colors is back on and back up and running. It was only off for a week because it got a little, spanking on the hand, you know what I'm saying? So, because I let the music play, or let videos play, and they played what they wanted to play, and they played like sort of kind of movies to get my video shut down. Let's get this. All right, let's go. Ezekiel 4, a sign of Jerusalem's siege. Can everybody hear me? Is the audio good? Kusabi or Shalom, everybody. All right. I believe y'all can hear me. I don't see no one saying that they can't hear me or anything. So yeah, I can see. Y'all can see that y'all can hear me. All right. Let me see. All right, now you son of man, take a brick, place it before you, and draw on it the city of Mali or Nigeria or Jerusalem in this case. All right. So we see that Ezekiel is given instructions to draw Jerusalem, and then he's going to be told to fight against it. Like, this is real talk. Like, understand, it is the Father. It is not an enemy. It is the Father who is doing this. He has ordered his prophet to be against Jerusalem, against the people, as always. That's just what the Father does. He has his prophets to do his bidding, you know what I'm saying, against his people when they act up. So right now, we got a couple pages up and going. Like I said, Gambian Truth Colors is still going. Owned by Yao is still going on YouTube and the regular pages on Facebook and then Twitter. He says, then lay siege against it. That means fight against it. After you draw this picture of Jerusalem, fight against it. Construct a siege wall. He has to build some things. He has to look. Before Legos, there was a Father and Ezekiel. Construct a siege wall. Build a ramp to it. Set up camps against this. He is literally, why is he telling them to build ramps against it? Because now we can see exactly what took place with us. The enemy, the nations, they built a ramp up to our place. That's what they did. How do we know that? Because we see the same thing that Ezekiel is doing. He is acting out what the Father told him to act out. Why is he acting it out? Because this is exactly what they're going to do. So now we see clearly what the nations did to us. Don't remind me of sawfly. When I saw a fly, just anybody who know me, I do not like flies. I would stop what I'm doing to go kill a fly. I don't like them at all. I don't like to sleep when they go to. I don't like to be, sleeping and a flies in your house. I don't like that. You know what I'm saying? Because where they land at, I just don't like them at all. Like those are the things on the earth can be done without. You know what I'm saying? Less of those. Completely. Do not care for a fly. I will let spiders in my house just to kill flies. Like seriously. I will let a spider have room and board so it can do one job. Make sure to kill the flies. Set up booby traps all throughout the house to kill flies. That's how much I hate flies. I guess they have a purpose, some shape, form, or fashion, maybe with the food chain, but that's about it. Other besides that, they are disgusting. Like, disgusting. There's no ever would I want to have a pet insect fly. Never. And then Fly the movie was sickening as well. It was just nasty on all levels that you could think of. And that was like in the 1980s, but it still was a nasty movie. It was just gross beyond you can even think about. Like, I don't know what a person would think about. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make a movie. What you could call it? The Fly. Okay. There's a reason why we choosing The Fly. And that's what you learned a lot about flies on what they really do and how nasty they really are in this movie. Yeah. Flies are nasty. All right. So we have a whole setup. Father got everything planned. So even when he attacks you, it's planned. It is perfectly planned. You think you getting away, but the Father has you right where he wants you. That is a scary thing because you think you're just doing you. I'ma do me. And you doing you is literally setting you up for the failure that is coming to you because you're not listening. That I'ma do me syndrome means you have been rejected by the Father. Just saying. It's the truth. That's why I don't be saying the words I'ma do. No. Because I'm reminded of the word that says, apart from me, you can do nothing. So when people start saying, I'ma do me, you do you, like, oh no, you biting with Satan right now. You and Satan are going neck to neck because your thinking is off kilter. That is not the word at all. You doing you will get you sent to hell. That's exactly what Adam and Eve did. They did them. Okay, so the next time someone say, do you, and I'ma do me. Say like, you know what Adam and Eve did that? It didn't really work out that well for them. I'm serious. Think about it. I'm serious. Think about it. Adam and Eve did themselves. They did it. They did you. You do me, and I'ma do. You do you, and I do, and I'ma do me. That's exactly what they did. All the enemy's doing is regurgitating a curse. And then he put it in a nice little saying and gave it to everyone to say, which is the same thing as eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's what it means to do you. Do you means I am going to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. I don't care about the truth at all, anything like that. This is my truth. To say this is my truth, that's the same thing as eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Why? Because instead of eating the spirit, eating from the tree of life, she literally ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which became her truth, which became his truth too. That's when the Messiah would come and says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Why? Because the knowledge of good and evil, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, always tries to plays off as the truth. So you think your knowledge that you have is the truth, when there's only one truth. And your truth is not it. And I don't care what it is you done been through, what you think you know, it is not your truth. This is my truth. You don't speak your truth. You either speak the truth, and the truth is the word. That is it. Most of the stuff that you go through in your life is because you was on the outside of the truth. Think about it. Most of the heartache and pain you experience is going to come because you are outside the truth. You're not walking with truth, because if you was walking with truth, most of those things probably would never ever happen. But if you hard-head and don't listen, then guess what? You don't have a right to say, this is my truth. You don't have a right. Because you didn't have to experience that if you listen. So that became your punishment for not listening to the truth. That's what the truth is. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Let's go. So watch this. So we can see the whole scenario. We ain't got to guess what they did. I don't wonder what they did to us. It's telling you right here. They're going to construct a siege wall. They're going to build a ramp up to our castle or to our wall. Then they're going to set up camps against it. So that means it's going to be armies after armies after armies after armies trying to assault us and attack us. Look at it. It's got the whole thing laid up. Set up the camps against it. Watch this. And place battering rams around it on all sides. So they took battering rams to our doors. They batter rams our castle, our doors, our kingdom. They tore the doors down with battering rams. You can see it right here. It's telling you everything that happened. We ain't gotta, I wonder what happened. It's telling you right here. Then take an arm plate and set it up as an armed wall between yourself and the city. Turn your face towards it so that it is under siege and besiege it. Watch this. This will be a sign to the house of Israel. So if this is going to be a sign to the house of Israel, this same kind of sign got to show up in the banner that is going to be constructed or made in the last days. Let's go. Then lie down on your left side and place the iniquity of the house of Israel upon yourself. You are to bear their iniquity for the number of days you lie on your side. Now imagine, like we talked about earlier, you can't move. You on the ship. You are now, watch this. So you've already, so they got you now. So they done besieged you, set a ramp up, got a battering rams. Now watch this, you're being placed in a holding cell. Most likely a holding cell or getting ready to go to the ships. But look how it is. You're in captivity. You're the battering rams that came in and they got you. So now you're either being held hostage in a jail, waiting to go to the Americas. You are to bear their iniquity for the number of days you lie on your side. For I have assigned to you, I have assigned, look at that. I've assigned 390 days according to the number of years of their iniquity. Oh, and you're going to pay that off. Oh, don't worry. You're going to pay this off wonderfully. So you shall bear the iniquity of the house of Israel. When you have completed these days, you think it's over. Oh, no. Lie down again, but on your right side, and bear the iniquity of the house of Judah. I have assigned to you 40 days, a day for each year. You must turn your face towards the siege of Jerusalem with your arm bared and prophesy, with your arm bared and prophesy against it. Now behold, I will tie you up with ropes so you cannot turn from side to side. See? Until you have finished the days of your siege. Do you understand that? He's tying them up so he is still. Watch this. The father says, I'm going to tie you up. Can you imagine who probably showed up to tie him up? To make sure he can't move? So let's count those days real quick. Let's do that, shall we? $390 plus 40 equals 430 years. Remember? 430 years. That's what the father said, right? 430 years. So 390 for Israel, for the house of Israel, and 40 years for Judah. Altogether, 430 years. Now, we're going to go listen to this person who, Nathan, who did the little math for us on the call. Because he's going to talk about that 430 years.
Shalom, and welcome to the call. Before we get started,
How long were the Israelites in Egypt? In Exodus 12:40 it says, "Now the length of time the Israelite people lived in Egypt was 430 years." And so because of this, movies like the Ten Commandments will say things like this.
That's a hard dance you do, old man. We've been dancing it for 400 years.
400 years we have waited.
400 years in bondage, and today he won't move.
After 400 years of slavery.
And experts on the topic will say things like this.
The Israelites were there 430 years. We have the record in the Bible that tells about the Israelites going into Egypt and living there for 430 years.
But if you do the math, you'll find that this is not mathematically possible. You see, Moses was 80 years old when they left Egypt. His father Amram lived to 137. His father Kohath lived to 133. And Kohath was one of the 66 persons who went with Jacob down into Egypt. Now let's just stretch this out as much as we possibly can. Let's assume that Kohath was a newborn baby when he arrived in Egypt. Let's assume that Amram was born the year that his father died, and let's assume that Moses was born the year that his father died. So take 133 plus 137 plus 80, and that equals 350, which means that the amount of time the Israelites were in Egypt could have been no longer than 350 years maximum. Now, more than likely, Kohath was probably not a newborn baby when he arrived in Egypt. More than likely, Moses was not born the year that his father died, and more than likely, Amram was not born the year that his father died, which means that the amount of time the Israelites were in Egypt would have been significantly less than 350 years. So why does Exodus 12:40 say the Israelites were in Egypt for 430 years when this is not mathematically possible? The key is found in one of Paul's letters. In Galatians 3:16 and 17, Paul says, "Now to Abraham and his seed were the promises made. And this I say, that the law, which was 430 years later, cannot annul the covenant that was confirmed before by God in Christ." Basically, Paul is saying that from the time that Abraham received the promise to the time that Moses received the law, there was 430 years. Well, Abraham received the promise when he entered Canaan when he was 75 years old. Then, 25 years later, when Abraham was 100 years old, that's when Isaac was born. Then, 60 years later, when Isaac was 60 years old, that's when Jacob was born. Then, 130 years later, when Jacob was 130 years old, that's when all of Israel arrived in Egypt. So take 25 plus 60 plus 130, and that equals 215, which means that there was 215 years from the time that Abraham entered Canaan to the time that all of Israel arrived in Egypt. Now, Moses received the law the same time that they left Egypt, because remember, the Israelites were living in Goshen, and then Moses led them out of Goshen, brought them through the wilderness, and brought them to the sea. And then God split the waters of the sea in half and brought them into Midian, which is in Arabia, then brought them to Mount Sinai, which is where Moses received the law. And so Moses received the law the same time they left Egypt. So Paul is saying that there was 430 years from this point to this point, and according to the Old Testament, there's 215 years from this point to this point. So take 430 years and then subtract 215 years, and that equals 215, which means that the amount of time that the Israelites were in Egypt was 215 years. 215 in Egypt, 215 in Canaan, 430 total. Now that is mathematically possible, because 215 is significantly less than 350, and that's exactly what the Greek Septuagint says in Exodus 12:40. It says, "And the sojourning of the children of Israel while they sojourn in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan was 430 years. The Samaritan Pentateuch says the same thing. It says, "Now the sojourning of the children of Israel and of their fathers, which they had dwelt in the land of Canaan and in Egypt was 430 years. Flavius Josephus says they left Egypt 430 years after our forefather Abraham came into Canaan, but 215 years only after Jacob removed into Egypt. Flavius Josephus is saying the exact same thing. He's saying they left Egypt 430 years since our forefather Abraham came into Canaan, but 215 years only since Jacob removed into Egypt. Flavius Josephus is saying the exact same thing. So why do modern translations say that the Israelites were in Egypt for 430 years when this is not mathematically possible? The reason why is because modern translations like the New King James, the NIV, the NASB, these are all translated from the Hebrew Masoretic text. But the Hebrew Masoretic text is not the original Hebrew text. The copy of the Masoretic text that most modern translations are translated from is called the Leningrad Codex, which was copied in the 11th century AD. But the Greek Septuagint was translated more than 1,000 years before that in 250 BC, which means that the Greek Septuagint would not have been translated from the Hebrew Masoretic, but rather it would have been translated from a much older copy of the Hebrew that's no longer around today. The Samaritan Pentateuch also predates the Masoretic text and would also have been translated from a much older copy of the Hebrew. Flavius Josephus was a 1st century Jewish historian. He lived long before the Masoretic text was copied, and Josephus had access to ancient Hebrew texts that have since been lost or destroyed. Paul the Apostle lived long before the Masoretic text was copied, and Paul knew Hebrew. In Acts 26, when Paul talks about his encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus, he says that Jesus spoke to him in the Hebrew language, and Paul understood him. Paul knew Hebrew, and so Paul would also have studied from a much older copy of the Hebrew. And what Paul says in Galatians 3:16 and 17 is consistent with the Greek Septuagint, the Samaritan Pentateuch, and the writings of Flavius Josephus. Now the Bible says, by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word shall be established. Well, we've got more than 2 or 3 witnesses here. We've got 4 witnesses all bearing witness that the original Hebrew text said that the Israelites will be in Egypt and Canaan for 430 years. But more than 1,000 years later, when the Hebrew Masoretic text was copied, the phrase "and Canaan" was dropped out of the text, and all of our Bibles are translated from this corrupted copy of the Hebrew. The New King James, the Old King James, the NIV, the NASB, the ESV. If you go to BibleGateway.com, you'll find there's 50 English translations of the Bible on this website, and every single one of them say that the Israelites were in Egypt for 430 years, which is incorrect and mathematically impossible. Every single one of these translations are inconsistent with the original Hebrew because they're all translated from the Hebrew Masoretic, and according to these 4 witnesses, the Masoretic text copied it incorrectly. As a matter of fact, these ages of Moses and his father and grandfather are recorded in the Masoretic. Yet they only add up to 350 years maximum. So in that sense, there's even a 5th witness. The Masoretic bears witness against itself. And so the amount of time the Israelites were in Egypt was only 2. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered Pharaoh's service. Then shortly after, there were 7 years of abundance and then 7 years of famine. So it would appear that after the 7 years of abundance, Joseph would have been 37 years old. Then 2 years into the famine, when he was 39, that's when all of Israel arrived in Egypt. So based on the information given, it appears as if Joseph was 39 years old at the beginning of that 215 years. Then Joseph died at 110. So take 110 and subtract 39, and that equals 71, which means that for 71 years, the Israelites were in Egypt under Joseph's rule, and they were not slaves than 144 years maximum. Now Moses was 80 years old when they left Egypt, and they were already in slavery when Moses was born, which means that they could not have been slaves for any less than 80 years minimum. So take the 215 years that the Israelites were in Egypt, subtract the 71 years that Joseph was in power, subtract the 80 years of Moses' life, and that equals 64, which means that there were 64 years in between Joseph's death and Moses' birth. The Israelites became slaves sometime after Joseph died and sometime before Moses was born, sometime within that 64-year time period. Now let's just assume that the Israelites became slaves at exactly the midpoint in between Joseph's death and Moses' birth. That would be 32 years after Joseph died and 32 years before Moses was born. If this is the case, then that would mean that the Israelites were slaves for 112 years. And so the amount of time the Israelites were in slavery was probably about 112 years or so. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but definitely no more than a maximum of 144 and definitely no less than 80 years minimum. Whatever the case, the Israelites were definitely not slaves for nearly as long as the movies make it sound when they say,
400 years in bondage, and today he won't move.
The Israelites were not slaves for 400 years. They were only slaves for about 112 years or so, plus or minus 32 years. 115 years that the Israelites were in Egypt, subtract the 71 years that Joseph was in power, subtract the 80 years of Moses' life, and that equals 64, which means that there were 64 years in between Joseph's death and Moses' birth. The Israelites became slaves sometime after Joseph died and sometime before Moses was born, sometime within that 64-year time period. Now let's just assume that the Israelites became slaves at exactly the midpoint in between Joseph's death and Moses' birth. That would be 32 years after Joseph died and 32 years before Moses was born. If this is the case, then that would mean that the Israelites were slaves for 112 years. And so the amount of time the Israelites were in slavery was probably about 112 years or so. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but definitely no more than a maximum of 144 and definitely no less than 80 years minimum. Whatever the case, the Israelites were definitely not slaves for nearly as long as the movies make it sound when they say,
400 years in bondage, and today he won't move.
The Israelites were not slaves for 400 years. They were only slaves for about 112 years or so, plus or minus 32 years. But doesn't Genesis 15:13 say that they'll be enslaved for 400 years? No, it doesn't. It says they'll be enslaved and mistreated 400 years, and not their own. Egypt was a land not their own. Isaac was Abraham's seed. Jacob was Abraham's seed. The multitudes in Egypt were Abraham's seed. Isaac was mistreated in Canaan. Genesis says that Ishmael, the son of Hagar, was scoffing at Isaac. Paul says in Galatians that the son who was born according to the flesh, who was Ishmael, persecuted the son who was born according to the Spirit, who was Isaac. Paul says that Ishmael persecuted Isaac. So Isaac, Abraham's seed, was persecuted or mistreated in Canaan, a land not his own. Abraham's seed was mistreated in a land not his own. From the time that Abraham received the promise to the time that Moses received the law, there was 430 years according to Galatians 3:17. 25 years after Abraham received the promise, that's when Isaac was born. That takes it down to 405 years. Now Genesis says that Ishmael scoffed at Isaac on the same day that Isaac was weaned. Well, according to the Jewish Agency for Israel, in Talmudic times it was the custom to celebrate the child's weaning anytime from 18 months to 5 years. It goes on to say that according to Rabbi Joshua, a child should be allowed to nurse up to the age of 5. Well, if Isaac was weaned at 5 years of age, and Ishmael began to persecute Isaac on the same day that Isaac was weaned, then that would take it down to exactly 400 years. Abraham's seed was mistreated in Canaan. Abraham's seed was mistreated in Egypt. Abraham's seed was enslaved in Egypt. Abraham's seed was enslaved and mistreated in a land not their own 400 years. You see, when you take the prophecy in Genesis and you match that up with the timeline in Exodus, then you're able to understand how these puzzle pieces fit together. But the main thing that causes people to misinterpret this prophecy in Genesis is the Hebrew Masoretic text has dropped the phrase "and Canaan" out of the text. This is the main thing that causes people to believe that the Israelites were in Egypt for 430 years. But the truth is, they were in Egypt for only half that time, for 215 years. According to the documentary Patterns of Evidence, The Exodus, the Israelites' arrival in Egypt was around 1665 BC, and the Exodus took place at about 1450 BC. This means that the Israelites were in Egypt for 215 years. This is the only thing that the archaeological evidence supports. The evidence does not support 430 years in Egypt. This is the reason why it's important to understand biblical history correctly first, in order to correctly understand how it correlates with Egyptian history and archaeology.
Nice. By Nathan Hoffman, huh? But see, I even came at Nathan and told him, well, Nathan, that was nice. I love the math that you proved that our ancestors was not in Egypt for 400 years. Meaning, the prophecy was not fulfilled in that Egypt, if you will. But there is some particulars that he kind of overlooked. And I expect that when we start bringing, which means, oh, great mighty teacher, you know. When you start bringing in stuff like that in the Talmudic thing, you are going to have some problems. But there's one thing inside of that 400-year prophecy, all right, where Abba said to him, all right, Abraham or Abram, this is what's going to happen to your people. Oh, but wait a minute. You'll be long dead before it happens. So, anything that takes place with Ishmael and Isaac at the time of Abraham doesn't count. Because father is either true or he's not true. He saw the dread or these bad things
just had the power go out for all that time. It's crazy. I might just do this tomorrow. Hopefully it'll be better weather again. Cause yeah. Well, pretty much before the power went out, Nathan, he pretty much let us know that the numbers for the people to carry out for slavery was not 430 years. But it clearly says 430 years. So he proved that they didn't serve that time. But here it is right here. 430 years. 390 plus 40. 430 years. Gotta love it. All right. Turn your face towards it. All right. So we got this. 40 days. The defiled bread. Everything that we see here is what you're going to have to go through. But take wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and spelt. Notice there is no meat in this. Put them in a single container, and make them into bread for yourself. All of that. Wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and spelt. This is what you're going to put in a single container. And you're going to make bread from it. This is what you are to eat during the 390 days you lie on your side. So that's 390 years. You are to weigh out 20 shekels of food. So your food is to be what? Rationed to you. You have a ration meal. You can't get it when you want to. You have to get it only at certain times. And the Father is going to tell them it's only certain times you can do this. So to eat each day, and you are to eat it at, watch this, set times. It's not like your food being rationed to you like you're in jail or something. Or you're in slavery. You are also to measure on a sixth of a hin of water. Do you see? It's being rationed out to you to drink. And you are to drink it at set times, so you can see exactly what we went through. So our food was rationed out to us. We was given water that was measured out to a certain cup or a certain size. And it was given out to us only at certain times. We couldn't just get it because we wanted to. We had to wait for this water or for this food to be given to us. Notice that he said you are to eat it at certain times. He is literally taking on everything that we're going to go through. Watch this. Then the Father says, this is how the Israelites will eat their defiled bread among the nations to which I will banish them. Do you see? So you ain't got to guess how it was, because the Father don't want you to guess how things was. He wants you to know how things was. He wants you to know. Don't guess. Oh, no. I want you to know. And so that's what he's doing. Ah, yeah, I said, I have never defiled myself from my youth until now. I have not eaten anything found dead or mauled by wild beasts. No unclean meat has ever entered my mouth. Look, he replied, I will let you use cow dung instead of human excrement, and you may bake your bread over that. Do you understand? He has to bake his bread over feces. Now, notice what the Father said. He told him to use human feces. But then the Father said, you know what? I'll make an exception in this one. You still got to use feces, but you can use cow feces. Now, the implications of this means that we ourselves used our own human feces to cook some of our stuff. So now we see how it would be for us in slavery to use. So we use, if we didn't have wood or whatever, we could say we use crap. So someone would sit right there and they would crap, and I guess they use that to bake their foods. Let that sink in. Are you starting to see what they went through? Love it. Then he told me, son of man, I am going to cut off the supply of food in Jerusalem. They will anxiously eat bread, watch this, rationed by weight. And in despair, they will drink water by measure. So they will lack food and water. They will be appalled at the sight of one another, wasting away in their iniquity. There is a famine that is coming. Let's keep going. Now I got to cut his hair. And I'm going to bring this up again with the call, part 1. The razor of judgment. As for you, son of man, take a sharp sword, use it as a barber's razor, and shave your head and beard. Then take a set of scales and divide the hair. When the days of the siege have ended, you are to burn up a third of the hair inside the city. You are also to take a third and slash it with the sword all around the city, and you are to scatter a third to the wind, for I will unleash a sword behind them. Woo. But you are to take a few strands of hair and secure them in the folds of your garment. Again, take a few of these, throw them into the fire, and burn them. For there a fire will spread to the whole house of Israel. This is what the Father says. This is Jerusalem, which I have set in the center of the nations, with countries all around her. But she has rebelled against my ordinances more wickedly than the nations. Wait a minute. So you did worse than the nations. You did worse than those who are not his people. And against my statutes, worse than the countries around her. You did worse than the Hamitic people around you. For her people have rejected my ordinances and have not walked in my statutes. Therefore, this is what the Father says. You have been more insubordinate than the nations around you. That is Ham. You have not walked in my statutes or kept my ordinances, nor have you conformed to the ordinances of the nations around you. Therefore, this is what the Father says. Behold, I myself, not Satan, I myself am against you, Jerusalem, and I will execute judgments, not judgment, judgments among you in the sight of the nations. Because of all your abominations, I will do to you what I have never done before and will never do again. As a result, fathers among you, watch this, as a result, fathers among you will eat their sons, and sons will eat their fathers. Oh my goodness, what? I will execute judgment against you and scatter all your remnant to every wind. Now that makes sense when he says what? A son will be against his own father. We see this whole same play out again. Famine, sword, and dispersion. Look what it says. Famine, sword, and them being scattered. Therefore, as surely as I live, declares the Father, because you have defiled my sanctuary. He said, I will execute judgments against you and scatter all. Look at this. I will execute judgments against you and scatter all your remnant to every wind. All. Not some, all. Therefore, as surely as I live, declares the Father, because you have defiled my sanctuary with all your detestable idols and abominations, I myself will withdraw my favor. I will not look upon you with pity, nor will I spare you. Now we got to look into the things that people are getting into now. A third of your people will die. Listen to that. A third. I told you that. Remember, I said like a third, meaning like out of all of us. From the moment that we go into slavery, meaning all of us now, a third of us will not make it. Do you understand that there is no separation? So from the time that our people was in slavery, still a third will still also include us. A third of your people will die by plague or be consumed by famine within you. A third will fall by the sword outside your walls. And a third I will scatter to every wind and unleash a sword behind them. So that means when you get sent to the nations you're going to, still you're going to die. You're going to be hung, burnt at the stake. So this is what he means by some of you going to go into the nations and you're not going to be killed. You're going to escape the sword, meaning what? I'm going to leave you alive. You're going to become a part of what? The remnant, to bring forth the remnant. And when my anger is spent and I have vented my wrath against them, watch this, I will be appeased. Look at this. I will not be appeased until after I have killed a lot of you. Listen to that. I'm trying to help y'all understand some things, to see how the Father does. People think they know him, but you don't understand. The Father is literally he says, after my anger is spent, then I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be appeased. After he has killed a lot of us, he's like, now I can have some type of rest. I'm trying to help you to understand what it is. Trying to help you understand what it is. And when my anger is spent, when it's finished, when it is completed, and I have vented my wrath against them. So Father had to get some things off his chest. I will be appeased. And when I have spent my wrath on them, like he's going to take his anger out on them, they will know that I, the Father, in my zeal have spoken. I will make you a ruin and a disgrace among the nations. So for those who keep asking, like, why is things not working out for us? Why I always felt like black people was the most hated people on the earth. This is why. This is why. This is why you would be going through this. Let's keep going. I will make you a ruin and a disgrace among the nations around you, in the sight of all who pass by. So you will be a reproach, watch this, and a taunt, a warning, and a horror to the nations around you. When I execute judgments against you in anger, everything that's going to happen to you is going to be bouts of anger. When you see people getting hanged, it's going to be because they were angry. I will execute judgments against you in anger, wrath, and raging fury. They're going to, put you in jail out of anger, wrath, and raging fury. They're going to come against our children. George Steeney, all of them. They're going to do that in wrath, anger, rage, and fury. I, the Father, have spoken. When I shower you, watch this. When I shower you, come on now. We know when we go into the shower, how the water comes. It goes everywhere. When I shower you with deadly arrows of famine and destruction. Notice this is not Satan. This is the Father who has become our enemy. That I will send to destroy you. I will intensify the famine against you and cut off your supply of food. I will send famine and wild beasts against you. In that dogs, you try to run away. Each time our people try to run away, what they do? They send the dogs after you. Wild beasts. The dog was up and even eating our people. And they will, watch this, and they will leave you childless. So the wild beast against you, and they will leave you childless. Meaning what? When the dogs are brought in, that means most likely you're not going to live. This is your end. Watch this. Plague and bloodshed will sweep through you, and I will bring a sword against you. I, the Father, has spoken. Let's keep going. Hold on. Before we do that, let's go back to Ezekiel 5. So we can bring this part out. After you, son of man, take a sharp sword and use it. So now we're going to go ahead and get that real quick. We're going to go to this one.
Finish their journey, they will often give Israel captives.
Seriously, exactly that. And just like the 40 days and 40 nights, the flood can be accounted for, when Yah does a thing, he always leaves a record to make sure that the world knows that he means what he says. Let's check this out.
Slavery, the treatment of human beings as property, deprived of personal rights, has occurred in many forms throughout the world. But one institution stands out for both its global scale and its lasting legacy: the Atlantic slave trade, occurring from the late 15th to the mid-19th century and spanning 3 continents, forcibly brought more than 10 million Africans to the Americas. The impact it would leave affected not only these slaves and their descendants, but the economies and histories of large parts of the world. There had been centuries of contact between Europe and Africa via the Mediterranean, but the Atlantic slave trade began in the late 1400s with Portuguese colonies in West Africa and Spanish settlement of the Americas shortly after. The crops grown in the new colonies, sugarcane, tobacco, and cotton, were labor-intensive, and there were not enough settlers or indentured servants to cultivate all the new land. American natives were enslaved, but many died from new diseases, while others effectively resisted. And so, to meet the massive demand for labor, the Europeans looked to Africa. African slavery had existed for centuries in various forms. Some slaves were indentured servants, with a limited term and the chance to buy one's freedom. Others were more like European serfs. In some societies, slaves could be part of a master's family, own land, and even rise to positions of power. But when white captains came offering manufactured goods, weapons, and rum for slaves, African kings and merchants had little reason to hesitate. They viewed the people they sold not as fellow Africans, but criminals, debtors, or prisoners of war from rival tribes. By selling them, kings enriched their own realms and strengthened them against neighboring enemies. African kingdoms prospered from the slave trade, but meeting the Europeans' massive demand created intense competition. Slavery replaced other criminal sentences, and capturing slaves became a motivation for war rather than its result. To defend themselves from slave raids, neighboring kingdoms needed European firearms, which they also bought with slaves. The slave trade had become an arms race, altering societies and economies across the continent. As for the slaves themselves, they faced unimaginable brutality. After being marched to slave forts on the coast, shaved to prevent lice, and branded, they were loaded onto ships bound for the Americas. About 20% of them would never see land again. Most captains of the day were tight packers, cramming as many men as possible below deck. While the lack of sanitation caused many to die of disease, and others were thrown overboard for being sick or as discipline, the captains ensured their profits by cutting off slaves' ears as proof of purchase. Some captives took matters into their own hands. Many inland Africans had never seen whites before and thought them to be cannibals, constantly taking people away and returning for more. Afraid of being eaten, or just to avoid further suffering, they committed suicide or starved themselves, believing that in death their souls would return home. Those who survived were completely dehumanized, treated as mere cargo. Women and children were kept above deck and abused by the crew, while the men were made to perform dances in order to keep them exercised and curb rebellion. What happened to those Africans who reached the New World, and how the legacy of slavery still affects their descendants today, is fairly well known. But what is not often discussed is the effect that the Atlantic slave trade had on Africa's future. Not only did the continent lose tens of millions of its able-bodied population, but because most of the slaves taken were men, the long-term demographic effect was even greater. When the slave trade was finally outlawed in the Americas and Europe, the African kingdoms whose economies it had come to dominate collapsed, leaving them open to conquest and colonization. And the increased competition and influx of European weapons fueled warfare and instability that continues to this day. The Atlantic slave trade also contributed to the development of racist ideology. Most African slavery had no deeper reason than legal punishment or intertribal warfare, but the Europeans who preached a universal religion and who had long ago outlawed enslaving fellow Christians needed justification for a practice so obviously at odds with their ideals of equality. So they claimed that Africans were biologically inferior and destined to be slaves, making great efforts to justify this theory. Thus, slavery in Europe and the Americas acquired a racial basis, making it impossible for slaves and their future descendants to attain equal status in society. In all of these ways, the Atlantic slave trade was an injustice on a massive scale, whose impact has continued long after its abolition.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people. We just saw that. And thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand. So we just seen a part of them actually on the slave ship and those who made it to land, but we haven't really seen the effects of that. We got a lot to still yet to cover.
Being sold off at an auction. I mean, people auction things, things. You go on Craigslist, that's pretty much an auction. You got many different things that people auction off now. Like things.
On by Yah? How in the world is my stream unavailable? It says stream suspended for policy violations. How is there any kind of policy violations when this is coming off of my page and I'm actually playing? Like, serious. I mean, what in the world? People don't want to talk about slavery. They want to talk about these kind of things. So the day's coming when YouTube and everybody is going to be messed up. I'm so serious. Everyone who's trying to fight and try to hinder the truth, oh, there's going to be some trouble to pay. I don't know why they want to let this play now. I'm looking at it. It says stream unavailable. I'm going to snapshot it right here. They be doing too much. But on Truth Colors, it's playing though. Truth Colors is playing, but on by Yah, it says a violation. Doesn't make sense whatsoever.
Things that is used, old, no one wants. Even people are auction off shoes. They auction off commodities. People auction off cameras. All the time. People are always auctioning off things. People even auction off keyboards. But this auction was a total different type of auction. But the thing, or people I should say, are being auctioned off were considered to be just like these things. They were property. It wasn't just a regular auction. These people will be auctioned off just like a material possession to do whatever you want to do with. So if I wanted to take this keyboard and slam it down on the ground, by the fact that it's mine, you can't tell me that I was wrong. That's exactly how they viewed the slaves or branding. It's like the same thing as taking and putting your name on your keyboard, or putting your name on your speaker right there, or putting your name on your phone. It's your property. So they branded their names on their so-called property. Man, when you see the things that these people are going through, it makes you wonder, how they ever survive. Let's take a look.
All right, so we saw that the slaves had their hair cut. to prevent lice. So just like we see here in Ezekiel, it says, shave your head and beard. Everyone will be shaved, including the women. Let's go. Now we're going to 6. Now, this is the one that Mikha'el Massa is going to get wrong. But now we're going to read this with true understanding, right? We're going to just look at what the scripture is saying, not put our own thoughts to it, but literally take it for what it is saying, period. And the word of Yah came to me saying, Son of man, set your face against the mountains of Israel and prophesy against them. That means you prophesying against home now. There ain't going to be no peace at home. There's no peace for the wicked. You are to say, O mountains of Israel, hear the word of Yah. This is what the Father says to the mountains and hills, to the ravines and valleys. I'm about to bring a sword against you, and I will destroy your high places. Woo! He's prophesying that to the land. Your altars will be demolished, and your incense altars will be smashed. Hulk smashed. And I will cast down your slain before your idols. I will lay the corpses of the Israelites before their idols and scatter your bones around your altars. Now, it's the same thing when we see Ezekiel chapter 37, which is what? A valley of dry bones. Whenever you live in a city, wherever you live, the cities will be laid waste and the high places will be demolished, so that your altars will be laid waste and desecrated, your idols smashed and obliterated, your incense altars cut down, and your works blotted out. The slain will fall among you, and you will know that I am Yah. A remnant to be blessed. Here we go. Here's the 6:8 that he got wrong. Let's read Ezekiel 6, 8, and 9. But I will leave some remnants of you. Now watch this. Now let's bring this out. Look at all this stuff that's going on with you. Look what the Father says. Yet I will leave a remnant, for some of you will escape the sword when you are scattered. Means you're not in so-called Africa. You're being scattered to the nations. So you're not at home. But you will be in the nations, and some of you are going to escape the sword. Meaning what? You're going to live. That's point really simple. So we can see here that the people were sent to the nations. Watch this. So everyone wants to say that America is our home. Obviously, America cannot be our home, nor the nations will be our home. Why? Because the Father sent us to the nations to die. Father sent us to the nations just like he sent the Israelites into the wilderness to die. He didn't send them in the wilderness to live. He sent them in the wilderness to die for punishment. So we were sent to the nations for punishment. We was not meant to live. We was all meant to die. But the Father says, not all of you are going to die in captivity. Some of you are going to live. Watch. Look what he says. Some of you will escape the sword when you are scattered among the nations and throughout the lands. So now it's also talking about, watch this. So some of you even who are home, you're not going to die. You're still going to be mistreated in slavery and all that stuff. But it don't say anything you're not going to be in slavery. It doesn't say you was not going to be mistreated. It just says you're just not going to die. Right? You're going to make it out alive. You're still going to live. Watch this. Then in the nations to which they have been carried, watch this, captive. Hold up. Carried captive. In the nations where you've been carried, what? Carried captive. Been brought there as a slave. Your survivors will remember me. So the survivors, the remnant, will remember me. How? Because the one who comes in his name is going to show up with a banner. And at that time, that's when they will truly begin to remember the Father. Watch this. How I have been grieved by their adulterous hearts that turned away from me, and by their eyes that lusted after idols. So they will loathe themselves for the evil they have done and for all their abominations. Now, the only way that's going to happen is if you keeping the feast. Because the Day of Atonement is exactly what he's talking about. When you humble yourself, when you loathe yourself. It says anyone who does not loathe himself or does not what? Humble himself, they will be cut off from amongst his own people. You must deny yourself that day. And they will know that I am Yah. I did not declare, watch this, I did not declare in vain that I will bring this calamity upon them. Meaning what? I didn't say I'm going to do this and did not do it. If I said I'm going to bring some pain upon you, if I said I'm going to kill you, then dang on it, that's what I'm going to do. He says, I did not bring this, I did not declare in vain that I will bring this calamity upon them. Meaning what? Vain means what? It's not going to happen. Meaning like I did not say I'm going to do something to them and I did not do it. So the Father wants you to know that he did it to you. This is what the Father says. Clap your hands, stomp your feet, and cry out, alas, because of all the wicked abominations of the house of Israel, who will fall by sword and famine and plague. That's the same thing that's going to happen to the nations. Sword, famine, and plague. He who is far off will die by the plague. He who is near will fall by the sword. So, the ones who are far away from home, it's going to be a plague that's going to get you. Those who are in the homeland, they're going to send people in there with swords to kill you. And he who remains will die by famine. Meaning what? You ain't going to have enough to eat. You're going to go hungry. You're going to die by thirst, by hunger. So I will vent my fury upon them. Then you will know that I'm Yah when their slain lie among their idols, around their altars, on every high hill, on all the mountaintops, and under every green tree and leafy oak, the places where they offered the fragrant incense to all their idols. I will stretch out my hand against them, and wherever they live, I will make the land a desolate waste, from the wilderness to Diblah. Then they will know that I am Yah. So he just showed us where all of the desolation took place, from the wilderness all the way here. That's everywhere. From the wilderness to Diblah. This is the places of all the houses of Israel. From the wilderness to Diblah. That's our territory. It's a lot of territory. So we see that Mikha'el Massa got that thing wrong. He says, not all Judah are supposed to undergo slavery. No. Remember, it's not all people who are captive. Remember, it's not all the people who are captive. It is a great part. Let's read Ezekiel 6, 8, and 9. The word says that where you've been carried captive to. Yet I will leave a remnant, some of you who will escape the sword when you are scattered among the nations and throughout the lands. This is literally what happened to us in slavery. This is it right here. Ezekiel 7, the hour of doom. And the word of Yah came to me saying, O son of man, this is what the Father says to the land of Israel. The end, wow, the end has come upon the four corners of the land. Four corners of the land. Listen to that. Four corners. If it's four corners, that's either a square or a rectangle. That's the only way you're going to have four corners. What's more likely is it's probably a square. The four corners of the land. The end is now upon you. And I will unleash my anger against you. I will judge you according to your ways and repay you for all your abominations. I will not look on you with pity, nor will I spare you, but I will punish you for your ways and for the abominations among you. Then you will know that I'm Yah. This is what the Father says. Disaster, an unprecedented disaster. Behold, it is coming. The end has come. The end has come. It has roused itself against you. Behold, it has come. Doom has come to you. O inhabitants of the land, the time has come. The day is near. There is panic on the mountains instead of shouts of joy. Very soon I will pour out my wrath upon you and vent my anger against you. I will judge you according to your ways and repay you for all your abominations. He don't seem happy at all, does he? I will not look on you with pity, nor will I spare you. That means he ain't showing you no mercy. But I will punish you for your ways and for the abominations among you. Then you will know that I'm Yah, who strikes the blow. Behold, the day is here. It has come. Doom is gone out. The rod has budded. Now look at the same thing he used with Aaron, right? Was the high priest. His rod budded too. And now judgment is the same thing as a budded rod. So that means also like what? The branch or the rod is literally judgment. It's vengeance. He is vengeance. The Messiah is vengeance. Arrogance has bloomed. Their violence has grown into a rod to punish their wickedness. None of them will remain. None of their multitude, none of their wealth. Woo! That means we had money. None of them will remain. None of their multitude, none of their wealth, nothing of value. Wow. The time has come, the day has arrived. Let the buyer not rejoice, and the seller not mourn. For wrath is upon the whole multitude. The seller will surely not recover what he sold, while both remain alive. For the vision concerning the whole multitude will not be revoked, and because of their iniquity, not one of them will preserve his life. That means they're going to die. The desolation of Israel. That means, watch this. The ones who is pretty much purchasing these specific slaves or whatever, whatnot, they're going to lose out. Why? Because some of these slaves ain't going to make it to the shores. That's why it says, like, let not the buyer rejoice. Meaning what? You just bought death. They're not going to make it to the land. Some of these are going to die on the voyage there. They have blown the trumpet and made everything ready at the last trumpet sound. See, it's the same thing. The same as that thing that happened to us is going to happen to the nations. And made everything ready. But no one goes to war. For my wrath is upon the whole multitude. The sword is outside. Plague and famine are within. Those in the country will die by the sword, and those in the city will be devoured by famine and plague. The survivors will escape and live, watch this, in the mountains, moaning like doves of the valley, each for his own iniquity. Every hand will go limp, and every knee will turn to water. They will put on sackcloth, and terror will overwhelm them. Shame will cover all their faces, and all their heads will be shaved. They will throw their silver into the streets, and their gold will seem unclean. Their silver and gold cannot save them. Meaning, if you have a lot of money, if you're a rich person at this time, you can't even buy your way up out of this slavery. And their gold will seem unclean. Their silver and gold cannot save them in the day of the wrath of Yah. They cannot satisfy their appetites or fill their stomachs with wealth. For it became the stumbling block. For it became the stumbling block that brought their iniquity. His beautiful ornaments they transformed into pride and used them to fashion the vile images and detestable idols. Therefore I will make these into something unclean for them, and I will hand these things over as plunder to foreigners. That's to the strangers. And loot to the wicked of the earth, who will defile them. I will turn my face away from them, and they will defile my treasured place. Do you understand? The Father is turning his face so they can do anything they want to do. It's the same thing where it was to me when I read earlier, when I said that I was put in the place of the dead. And I thought about if something bad happened to me, the Father would not even care. That's exactly how I felt. And loot to the wicked of the earth, who will defile them. I will turn my face away from them, and they will defile my treasure place. Violent men will enter it, and they will defile it. Forge the chain. Wow. Forge the chain. For the land is full of crimes of bloodshed, and the city is full of violence. So I will bring the watch this. So I will bring the most wicked of nations. So every single person or nation that came against you, it wasn't the fact that they was holy. It was the fact that there was the most wickedest people on the face of the earth. And the Father got to bring a judgment to them. So when it's all said and done, they're going to get judged too, because they touched the Father's people. There's punishment for that. So I will bring the most wicked of nations to take possession of their houses. Look what he said. The most wicked of nations to take possession of their houses. That's crazy. I will end the pride of the mighty, and their holy places will be profaned. Anguish is coming. They will seek peace, but find none. Disaster upon disaster will come, and rumor after rumor. Then they will seek a vision from a prophet, but instruction from the priests will perish, as will counsel from the elders. The king will mourn, and prince will be clothed with despair, and the hands of the people of the land will tremble. I will deal with them according to their conduct, and I will judge them by their own standards. I will judge them by their own standards. Then they will know that I'm Yah. This is powerful. Here we go. We're into idolatry now. The vision of idolatry in the temple. In the 6th year of the 5th day of the 6 months, I was sitting in my house, and the elders of Judah were sitting before me, and there the hand of Yah fell upon me. Then I looked and saw watch this. Then I looked and saw a figure like that of a man. From his waist down, his appearance was like fire, and from his waist up, he was as bright as the gleam of a amber. He stretched out what looked like a hand and took me by the hair of my head. Then the Spirit lifted me between earth and heaven and carried me in a vision of Yah to Jerusalem, to the entrance of the north gate of the inner court, where the idol that provokes jealousy was seated. And there I saw the glory of Yah of Israel, like the vision. And there I saw the glory of Yah of Israel, like the vision I had seen in the plain. Son of man, he said to me, now lift up your eyes to the north. So I lifted up my eyes to the north, and the entrance north of the altar gate. Altar. I saw this idol of jealousy. Son of man, he said to me, do you see what they're doing? The great abomination that the house of Israel is committing, to drive me far from my sanctuary. Yet you will see even greater abominations. Then he brought me to the entrance of the court, and I looked and saw a hole in the wall. Son of man, he told me, dig through the wall. So I dug through the wall and discovered a doorway. Then he said to me, go in and see the wicked abominations they are committing here. So I went in and looked, and engraved all around the wall was every kind of crawling creature and detestable beast, along with all the idols of the house of Israel. Before them stood 70 elders of the house of Israel, and Jezaniah, son of Shaphan, standing among them. Each had a censer in his hand, and a fragrant cloud of incense was rising. Son of man, he said to me, do you see the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the darkness? Each at the shrine of his own idol, for they are saying, the Father does not see us, the Father has forsaken the land. Again he told me, you will see them committing even greater abominations. Greater abominations. Then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of Yah, and I saw women sitting there weeping for Tammuz, or weeping for what? The Messiah, right? The one they call Messiah, the one they call white Messiah, right? JC. Son of man, he said, do you see this? Yeah, you will see even greater abominations than these. So he brought me to the inner court of the house of Yah, and there at the entrance of the temple of Yah, between the patio and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs to the temple, to Yah, and their faces towards the east. And they were bowing to the east in worship to the sun. Son of man, he said to me, do you see this? Is it not enough for the house of Judah to commit the abominations they are practicing here, that they must also fill the land with violence and continually provoke me to anger? Look, they are even putting the branch to their nose. Therefore, I will respond with wrath. I will not look on them with pity, nor will I spare them. All that they shout loudly, watch this, although they shout loudly in my ears, I will not listen to them. Which is what? Kumbaya. They would say, Kumbaya, my Lord, Kumbaya. He didn't hear you because of what you said, what you did. Execution of the idolaters. Watch this. Then I heard him. So we can see salvation is showing up at the same time when people are about to be killed. They're about to go into slavery. Watch what's happening. Then I heard him call out in a loud voice, saying, draw near, O executioner of the cities, each with a weapon of destruction in hand. And I saw 6 men coming from the destruction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with a weapon of slaughter in his hand. With them was another man clothed in linen, who had a writing kit at his side. And they came in and stood beside the bronze altar. Then the glory of Yah of our people rose from above the cherub where it had been and moved to the threshold of the temple. He called to the man clothed in linen. All right. So where it had been and moved to the threshold of the temple. And he called to the man clothed in linen, who had a writing kit at his side. Go throughout the city of Jerusalem, said the Father, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men sighing and grieving or groaning over the abominations committed here. Do you understand? If you're not grieving over what the Father's grieving over, then that means you're not part of him. He definitely ain't got no part with you. Go throughout the city of Jerusalem, said the Father, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men sighing and grieving or groaning over all the abominations committed here. And as I listened, he said to the others, follow him through the city and start killing. Do not show pity or spare anyone. Slaughter the old men, the young men, the maidens, the women, the children, but do not go near anyone who has the mark. Now begin at my sanctuary. So they began with the elders who were before the temple. Then he told them, defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go forth. So they went out and began killing throughout the city. While they were killing, I was left alone, and I fell face down and cried out, O Father, when you pour out your wrath on Jerusalem, will you destroy the entire remnant of Israel? He replied, the iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great. The land is full of bloodshed, and the city is full of perversity. For they say the Father has forsaken the land and does not see. But as for me, I will not look on them with pity, nor will I spare. I will bring their deeds upon their own heads. The man clothed in linen with the writing kit at his side reported back, I have done as you commanded. So we see that there's some stuff that's about to take place before the people are killed. People are still being saved. A remnant is being saved at this time. They're still going to be treated badly in the place where they're going to, but at least they're going to escape the sword, okay? So Father glory exit the temple. Look at this. Father's glory exit the temple. If it exit the temple, it ain't coming back. And I looked and saw above the expanse, above the heads of the cherubim, the likeness of a throne of sapphire. And the father said to the man clothed in linen, go inside the wheelwork beneath the cherubim. Fill your hands. Look what it says. Go inside the wheelwork beneath the cherubim. Fill your hands with burning coals from among the cherubim and scatter them over the city. And as I watched, he went in. Now when the man went in, the cherubim were standing on the south side of the temple, and a cloud filled the inner court. Then the glory of Yah rose from above the cherubim and stood over the threshold of the temple. The temple was filled with the cloud, and the court was filled with the brightness of the glory of Father. The sound of the wings of the cherubim could be heard as far as the outer court, like the voice of Almighty Yah when he speaks. And when the Father commanded the man clothed in linen, saying, take fire within the wheelwork from among the cherubim, the man went in and stood beside a wheel. Then one of the cherubim reached out his hand and took some of the fire that was among them, and he put it into the hands of the man clothed in linen. He received it and went out. The cherubim appeared to have a form of human hands under their wings. Then I looked and saw 4 wheels beside the cherubim, one wheel beside each cherub, and the wheels gleamed like a beryl stone. And as the appearance, all 4 had the same form, like a wheel within a wheel. Then they moved. They will go in any of the 4 directions without turning as they move. For wherever the head faced, the cherubim will go in that direction without turning as they move. The entire bodies, including their backs, hands, and wings, were full of eyes all around. And as were those 4 wheels, I heard the wheels being called the whirling wheels. That means they're spinning. Each of the cherubims had 4 faces. The first face was that of a cherub, the second of a man, the third of a lion, and the fourth of an eagle. Each of the cherubim had 4 faces. The first face was that of a cherubim, the second that of a man, the third that of a lion, and the fourth that of an angel, or that of an eagle. Then the cherub rose upward. These were the living creatures as seen by the river Kabar. When the cherubim moved, the wheels moved beside them, and even when they were spread their wings to rise from the ground, the wheels did not veer away from their side. When the cherubim stood still, the wheels also stood still. And when they ascended, the wheels ascended with them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. Then the glory of Yah moved along from the threshold of the temple and stood above the cherubim. As I watched, the cherubim lifted their wings and rose from the ground with the wheels beside them as they went. And they stopped at the entrance of the east gate of the house of Israel. With the glory of Yah of Israel above them. These were the living creatures that had seen beneath Yah of Israel by the river Kibar, and I knew that they were cherubim. Each had 4 faces, 4 wings, and with what looks like a human hands under their wings. Their faces looked like faces I had seen by the river Kibar. Every creature went straight ahead. What the word says, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against wickedness in high places, evil in high places. Then the Spirit lifted me up and brought me to the gate of the house of Yah that faces east. And there at the entrance of the gate there were 25 men, and among them I saw Jezaniah, son of Asher, and Pelidah, son of Benai, who were elders or leaders of the people. Then the Father said to me, Son of man, these are the men who plot evil and give wicked counsel to this city. They are saying, this is not the time near to build houses. The city is the cooking pot, and we are the meat. Therefore prophesy against them. Prophesy, O son of man. And this is the spirit of Yah fell, and the spirit of Yah fell upon me, and told me to declare that this is what the Father says. This is what you are thinking, O house of Israel, and I know the thoughts that arise in your minds. You have multiplied those you killed in this city and filled the streets with the dead. Therefore, this is what the Father says: the slain you have laid within the city are the meat, and the city is the pot. But I will remove you from it. You fear the sword, so I will bring the sword against you, declares the Father. I will bring you out of the city and deliver you into the hands of the nations, hands of foreigners. I will deliver you into the hands of foreigners, and I will execute judgments against you. You will fall by the sword, and I will judge you even to the brothers of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yah. The city will not be a pot for you, nor you will be the meat in it or within it. I will judge you even to the borders of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yah. For you have neither, for you, look what he says. For you have neither followed my statutes nor practiced my ordinances, but you have confirmed or conformed to the ordinances of the nations around you. The promise of restoration. That's what's going on right now. Now, as I was prophesying, Peleth the son of Benaiah died. Then I fell face down and cried out in a loud voice, "Oh, Yah, you will bring the remnant of Israel to a complete end?" Then the word of Yah came to me, saying, "Son of man, your brothers, your relatives, your fellow exiles, and the whole house of Israel are those of whom the people of Jerusalem have said, they are far away from Yah. This land has been given to us as a possession. Therefore declare this is what the Father said. Although I sent them far away among the nations." Do you see this? What's about to happen? Someone's about to try to come in and take over. And he's about to root them out too. I sent them far away among the nations and scattered them among the countries. Yet for a little while I have been a sanctuary for them in the countries to which they have gone. Therefore declares, this is what the Father says: I will gather you from the peoples and assemble you from the corners to which you have been scattered. And I will go back to you, watch this, and I will give back to you the land of Israel. When they return to it, they will, watch this, when they return to it, they will remove all the detestable things and all its abominations. They're going to clean it up. And I will give them, watch this, listen to what it says. And I will give them singleness of heart. That means there is no arguing. If you got a singleness of heart, that means you agree completely. There's no that you agree now and you disagree later on. Nope, it means you agree. I love that. They're agreeing one. And I will give them singleness of heart and put a new spirit. This is what it says, a new spirit. I will put a new spirit. Where? Within them. I hope y'all getting that. I will remove, watch this, I will remove their heart of stone. That's what majority of our people have. Our people have a heart of stone. That's what it is. A stony heart. But the Father says, I'm gonna remove it. I'm gonna remove that stony heart. and give them a heart of flesh, so that they may follow my statutes, keep my ordinances, and practice them. Then they will be my people. Then they will be my people, and I will be their Yah. So this right here is getting a little bit, it's just landed plain and simple, know what is happening to us. But as for those whose hearts pursue detestable things and abominations, I will bring your conduct down upon your own heads, declares the Father. Watch this. The Father's glory leaves Jerusalem. Then the cherubim, the wheels beside them, spread their wings, and the glory of Yah of Israel was above them. And the glory of Yah rose up from within the city and stood over the mountain east of the city. And the Spirit lifted me up and carried me back to Chaldea, to the exiles. In the vision have the Spirit of Yah after the vision had gone up from me. All right. To the exiles in the vision given by the Spirit of Yah after the vision had gone up from me, I told the exiles everything the Father had showed me. All right. Signs of the coming captivity. Look what it says. Signs. I and the children you have given me are for signs. Signs of the coming, hasn't happened yet, coming captivity. Then the word of Yah came to me saying, Son of man, you are living in a rebellious house. They have eyes to see, but do not see, and ears to hear, but do not hear, for they are rebellious houses. That's exactly what Isaiah said too. Therefore, son of man, pack your bags for exile. Look at this. This is slavery right here. This is what happened to us. Here is our story of slavery. What happened? Everything to the T. Watch this. Pack your bags for exile. In broad daylight, set out from your place and go to another as they watch. Here's an example, showing them what's about to happen to them. Perhaps they will understand. Perhaps they will understand. Though they are a rebellious house, bring out your baggage for exile by day as they watch. Then in the evening as they watch, go out like those who go into exile. As they watch, dig through the wall and carry your belongings out through it. And as they watch, lift your bags to your shoulder and take them out at dusk. Cover your face so that you cannot see the land, for I have made you a sign to the house of Israel. So I did as I was commanded. I brought out my bags for exile by day, and in the evening I dug through the wall by hand. I took my belongings out at dusk, carrying them on my shoulder as they watched. And in the morning, the word of Yah came to me saying, Son of man, hasn't the rebellious house of Israel asked you, what are you doing? Tell them that this is what the Father says. This burden concerns the prince of Jerusalem and all the house of Israel who are there. You are to say, I am a sign to you. No sign will be given except the sign of Jonah. You are to say, I'm a sign to you. Just as it happened here, so will it be done to them. They will go into exile as captives. That sounds like slavery. And at dusk, the prince among them will lift his bags to his shoulder and go out. They will dig through the wall to bring him out. He will cover his face so he cannot see the land. But I will spread my net over him, and he will be caught in my snare. I will bring him to Babylon, the land of the Chaldeans, yet he will not see it, and there he will die. And I will scatter to every wind all attendants around him and all his troops. And I will draw a sword to chase after them, and they will know that I am Yah. When I disperse them among the nations and scatter them throughout the countries. But I will spare a few of them, and sword and famine plague. And famine and plague, so that in the nations to which they go, they can recount all their abominations. They will know that I am Yah. Moreover, the word of Yah came to me, saying, Son of man, eat your bread with trembling, and drink your water with quivering and anxiety. Then tell the people of the land that this is what the Father says about those living in Jerusalem and in the land of Israel. They will eat with bread with anxiety and drink their water in dread, for their land will be stripped of everything in it because of the violence of all who dwell in it. The inhabited cities will be laid waste, and the land will become desolate. Then you will know that I'm Yah. The presumptuous proverb. Again, the word of Yah came to me, saying, Son of man, what is this proverb that you have heard in the land of Israel? The days go by, and every vision fails. Therefore, tell them that this is what the sovereign Yah says. I will put an end to this proverb. And Israel, they will no longer recite it. Wow. It said the vision fails me, like the words that was said by the Father don't ever happen. So it's like we're still waiting on it to happen. Still haven't happened yet. But I was like, all right, it's going to happen. Don't worry. It's coming. Because we means I'm going to end this proverb. Meaning what? Y'all going to try to say like I said I'm going to do something and I didn't do it. It's powerful. But say to them, the days are at hand when every vision will be fulfilled. For there will be no more false visions or flattering divinations. That's witchcraft right there. He said witchcraft flatters or flattering divinations within the house of Israel. All right, so, or flattering divinations within the house of Yah, because I, the Father, will speak, watch this, I will speak whatever word I speak, and it will be fulfilled without delay. For in your days, O rebellious house, I will speak a message and bring it to pass, declares the Father. Furthermore, the word of Yah came to me, saying, Son of man, take note that the house of Israel is saying, the vision that he sees is for many years from now. He prophesies about the distant future. Therefore, tell them that this is what the Father says. None of my words will be delayed any longer. The message I speak will be fulfilled after. The message I speak will be fulfilled, declares the Father. Reproof of false prophets. Then the word of Yah came to me, saying, Son of man, prophesy against the prophets of Israel who are now prophesying. Tell those who are prophesying tell those who prophesy out of their own imagination. Hear the word of Yah. This is what the Father says. Woe to the foolish prophets who follow their own spirit. This is what he just said. You're following your own spirit, yet have seen nothing. Your prophets, O Israel, are like foxes among the ruins. You did not go up to the gaps and restore the wall around the house of Israel so that it will stand in the battle on the day of Yah. No. It's crazy. Your prophets, O Israel, are like foxes among ruins. You did not go You did not go up to the gaps or restore the wall around the house of Israel so that it will stand in the battle on the day of Yah. They see false visions and speak lying divinations. They claim, thus says the Father, when the Father did not send them, yet they wait for the fulfillment of their message. Thus says what he said. All right, so thus declares the Father when they did not send them, when the Father did not send them, yet they wait for the fulfillment of their message. Haven't you seen a false vision and spoken a lying divination when you proclaim? Thus declares the Father, even though I have not spoken. Therefore, this is what the Father says, because you have uttered vain words and seen false visions, I'm against you, declares the Father. My hand will be against the prophets who see false visions and speak lying divinations. They will not belong to the council of my people or be recorded in the register of the house of Israel. The Father won't even add them in as the counsel for his people. So people calling themselves all these different leadership and everything like that, and the Father don't even see you as that. He sees you as somebody else. They will not belong to the council of my people or be recorded in the register of the house of Israel, nor will they enter into the land of Israel. Then you will know that I'm the Father, because you have led my people astray. Saying peace when there is no peace. What does that mean? Everyone's saying shalom. Always saying shalom. That's the same thing you're saying you got peace, but you don't got no peace. Look what he's saying right here. Because they have led my people astray, saying peace when there is no peace, and whitewashing any flimsy wall that is built. Tell those whitewashing the wall that it will fall. Rain will come in torrents. I will send hailstones plunging down, and windstorms will break forth. Surely when the wall has fallen, you will not be asked, where is the whitewash with which you covered? Therefore, this is what the Father says, in my wrath I will release a windstorm, and in my anger torrents of rain and hail fire. My anger torrents of rain and hail will fall from destructive fury. I will tear down the wall you whitewash and level it to the ground, so that its foundation is exposed. The city will fall, and you will be destroyed with it. Then you will know that I am the Father. And after I have been in my anger or been in my wrath against the wall and against those who whitewash it, I will say to you, the wall is gone, and so are those who whitewashed it. Those prophets of Israel who prophesied to Jerusalem and saw a vision of peace for her when there was no peace, declares the Father. Reproof of, watch this, of false prophetess. This is women now. So he's hitting everybody, men and women alike. Reproof of false prophetess. Now, son of man, set your face against the daughters of your people who prophesy, watch this, out of their own imagination. Prophesy against them and tell them that this is what the Father says. Woe to the women who sew magic charms on their wrists. Wow. And make veils, watch this, and make veils for the heads of people of every height in order to ensnare their souls. Will you, ensnare the souls of my people but preserve your own. You have profaned me among my people, for handfuls of barley and scraps of bread, by lying to my people who will listen. You have killed those who should have not died, and spared those who should have not lived. Therefore, this is what the Father says. See, I'm against the magic charms with which you ensnare souls like birds, and I will tear them from your arms. So I will free the souls you have ensnared like birds. I will also tear off your veils and deliver my people from your hands, so they will no longer be a prey in your hands. They will know that I am Yah. Because you have disheartened the righteous with your lies, even though I have caused them no grief, and because you have encouraged the wicked not to turn from their evil ways, to save their lives, therefore you will no longer see false visions or practice divination. I will deliver my people from your hands. Then you will know that I am Yah. So this is a lot right here. I'm not gonna go through all of this right now. But if you see, this is all leading up to our slavery. It's going to be coming. This is powerful. Then some of the elders of Israel came and sat down before me, and the word of Yah came to me, saying, Son of man, these men have set up idols, watch this, in their hearts, and put wicked stumbling blocks before their faces. Should I consult with them in any way? That's powerful. I mean, he don't talk to everybody. Even if you talk to him, he don't talk to you just because you want to talk to him. Therefore, speak to them and tell them this is what the Father says. When any Israelite sets up idols in his heart and puts a wicked stumbling block before his face, and then comes to the prophet, I, the Father, will answer him according to his great idolatry, so that I may hold to the hearts of the people of Israel. For because of their idols, they are all, watch this, estranged from me, strangers to me. Therefore, tell the house of Israel that this is what the Father says. Repent and turn away from your idols. Turn your faces away from all your abominations. For when any Israelite or foreigner dwelling in Israel separates himself from me, sets up idols in his heart, and puts a wicked stumbling block before his face, and then comes to the prophet to inquire of me, I, the Father, will answer him myself. Woo! I will set my face against that man and make him a sign and a proverb. I will cut him off from among my people. Then you will know that I am Yah. But if the prophet is enticed to speak a message, then it was the Father who enticed him. And I will stretch out my hand against him and destroy him from among my people. They will bear their punishment. The punishment of the inquirer will be the same as that of the prophet. So the inquirer is also getting punished. That means people who are nosy. In order that the house of Israel may no longer stray from me and no longer defile themselves with all their transgressions. Then they will be my people, and I will be their Yah, declares the Father. Watch this. 4 dire judgments. And when the word of Yah came to me, saying, Son of man, if a lamb sins against me by acting unfaithfully, and I stretch out my hand against it to cut off its supply, watch this, supply of food, and to send famine upon it, and to cut off from it both man and beast, watch this, then even if these men, Noah, Daniel and Job were in it, their righteousness could deliver, watch this, only themselves. He says only, he said Noah, Daniel, and Job would only have enough righteousness to deliver themselves. So then even if these three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, their righteousness could deliver only themselves, declares the Father. Or if I send wild beasts throughout the land to leave it childless and desolate, with no man passing through it for the fear of the beasts, then as surely as I live, declares the Father, Yah, even if these men were in it, they could not deliver their own sons or daughters. They alone would be delivered, but the land would be desolate. Meaning what? You're being eaten up by the wild beasts. Or if I bring sword against that land and say, let a sword pass through it, so I cut off from it both man and beast, then as surely as I live, declares the Father, even if these three men were in it, they could not deliver their own sons or daughters. They alone will be delivered. Or if I need to send a plague that the land and pour out my wrath upon it through bloodshed, cutting off from it both man and beast, then as surely as I live, declares the Father, Yah, even in Noah, Daniel and Job were in it. They could not deliver their own sons or daughters. Their righteousness could deliver only themselves. For this is what the Father says, how much worse will it be when I send against Jerusalem my forejudgment? Sword, famine, wild beasts, and plagues, in order to cut it off from before me, before man and beast. Yet behold, some survivors will be left in it, and some daughters will be brought out. They will come out to you when you see their conduct and actions. You will be confirmed regarding the disaster that I brought upon Jerusalem. All that I brought upon it, they will bring you consolation when you see their conduct and actions, and you will know that it was not without cause that I have done all these things within, declares the Father. Well, that's going to do it for us right now on Truth Colors. This was definitely meaty and definitely deserve another look at it. That's Ezekiel. But at this time, I'm about to get up off of here. Feel myself getting a little bit sleepy, so I'm about to get up off of here. Thanks for tuning in. As you can see, the book of Ezekiel right here is going detailing different things, what would take place during our exile, right before we get exiled, like while we're in slavery or be about to be made slaves. He's telling us what's happening. We can see it. We ain't got to guess about nothing. It's right here. And we ain't got to take no Joseph Lascivious word when we have the GOAT written. We have all of the stuff that done happened to us right here in Ezekiel. I'm just saying, man. I love this right here. It's beautiful. So, I'm about to get up out of here. Chill out for a little bit. Probably watch a movie or something. Or the movie might end up watching me. That's most likely what's going to happen. The movie's going to watch me.
so we are here at Truth Colors today, and today I blew my brother Yasha's mind, you know, by telling him something that he didn't even know about, you know. You see, the Father works in amazing ways. Yasha has had, see the background that I have right here? It has many colors. It's the Truth Colors background. So Yasha has had it since he started his YouTube channel. So me in the process of doing my reading my stuff and all that, I've read about the coat of many colors. You know, the father, all the patriarchs in the Bible used to have that coat. It goes down from Adam all the way till Joseph, and you know, during the period of Joseph is when the coat kind of disappeared, but it was the coat of many colors. The same thing is what my brother Yasha here has, Truth Colors. So you guys need to know that where all the colors for the truth are is where the Father dwells. So this guy has the truth and it's a bomb. If you guys are still double-minded, it's for your own doom. Check him out. Always listen to his words. The Father says, you listen to what he tells you. You don't look at what he's doing. Listen to what he's telling you. If you follow the instructions, boom, you'll be saved. If you look at Adam and Eve, they didn't follow the instructions. The Father gave them the instructions. They went away from it. They did their own thing. They leaned onto their own understanding. But right now, he's speaking to all of us through Yasha. So we're supposed to listen to what Yasha is telling us. Truth Colors. That's where the truth is. The way, the truth, and the lie. Yeah, my boy.
Appreciate it, fam. Appreciate it, fam. I do.
All right. You gonna cut it?
Yeah. All right, fam. Thank you for subscribing and supporting my Patreon channel, where the truth is not biased. It's absolute. I dedicate this channel through Nzambi Zulu to the awakening of my people and discovering who they truly are, to bring out information and revelation that they may not see anywhere else. And as we embark on this journey together, feel free to shop with us. OBYU, featuring our brand, Goshen Black. You can also purchase New Truth music from me, your boy Heart of Song, aka Music, featuring Etana, Nzambi, JG the Messenger, and other great artists on CD Baby and iTunes. It's time to awaken to the truth and power. Aren't you tired of being lied to? Truth speaks. Truth awakens. Truth colors.
Other Psalms.
Revelations. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image, and receive his mark into his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of Elohim, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest day nor night who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Satan cast into the lake of fire. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and they shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. The great white throne. And I saw a great white throne, and him that sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before Elohim, and the books were open, and another book was opened, which was in the book of life. And the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their works. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And they were judged, every man according to their works, in death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. But I will tell you what will happen to cowards and to everyone